Oh well, I guess so much for monetizing that video, but it was worth it to put a little Jerry in the morning. Welcome to Dave Lincoln Show. I did go ahead and sort of change the name off of Short Vol Show today because I did want to discuss Bitcoin for a second. We did see a big Bitcoin rally. It was up $1,000 in like 10 minutes, and even the most ardent Bitcoin supporters would say that that was due to a short squeeze situation. Bitcoin is a very well, at least most people that are trading it are pretty new to trading, and thus it's much more susceptible to volatility and to this sort of panic type thing. Um, and as far as Bitcoin goes, I've always been anti Bitcoin, and it hasn't helped me with subscribers and stuff like that. A lot of people have made a name for themselves on YouTube by being crypto guys, and in hindsight, maybe if I was just about getting subscribers and views, maybe I should have jumped on the crypto bandwagon. Rooted for them. Some of these guys have like 200,000, 300,000 subscribers, and they're going strong now. Um, One of the ones I really like is Doug Polk Crypto, and he kind of came out of the ashes and was sort of, one of the first to realize that this stuff wasn't necessarily going to go on forever. Doug Polk, of course, being a successful poker player before going to the crypto stuff. And most YouTube followers will be familiar with the Trevon James, Crypto Nick, BitConnect, all those scandals that are so exciting to watch videos on, and I've enjoyed watching those videos as well. Um, but yeah, Bitcoin did rally, and hardcore crypto people. First of all, I've said this before, but um, you can't really make it with crypto people if you're going to do videos that are anyway negative, and that's been true for a long time. Um, Bitcoin and also hardcore crypto people are really almost universally of the opinion that this is just another leg up, and somehow, some way, we are going to break the euphoria and really mania that happened in December of last year, and it will break 19,000. I think the high was around 19,000 and change, and take that to the next level of like 100,000 in Bitcoin. And over the last few months, a lot of people have, whether they'll admit it or not, have kind of realized that that's not going to happen, and that as all these things have just kind of faded off, and a lot of people, the sort of common knowledge around cryptos was like, to diversify, you buy more cryptos. And so people who were lucky enough to make some money, and I do use the term lucky enough to make some money, took that money and put it in other cryptos, altcoins. And there's these little factions now that say, oh, well, people that buy altcoins are stupid, but the big three, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin are still these like valid investments. And I'm of the opinion that they don't have any intrinsic value. And you have to separate out the whole blockchain. Blockchain as a technology is an interesting concept, and it is decentralized. It's not more efficient than centralized systems. And why is that? Well, part of it is that centralized systems for like credit cards and things like that have been a ton of money has been pumped into that for years and years because it actually is making money for all these credit card companies and stuff. There has been sort of electronic currency for very long. We all know that because most of our transactions are done through plastic or over our phones and that sort of thing. Also, most people know that Bitcoin transactions take a while to happen. So there are some advantages from like a philosophical perspective of having stuff decentralized and not controllable by anyone in specific. However, the governments are coming in with regulation against Bitcoin, and the system, the people who are in power are still in power. It's not like there was a power shift due to Bitcoin. It's a romantic concept, and I think people got it twisted. They, in their head, told themselves that they were on this like romantic thing of like, we're going to change the world and this and that. But in reality, they're mostly motivated by greed and trying to get something for nothing, which is, why people make money in the stock market too, because they're motivated by greed. And, my friend Connor always points out that it's kind of ridiculous how people, they kind of stumbled into something, and yeah, they put money at risk, but they stumbled into something where they made like 20 times their money in many cases in December last year. And then they get all bent out of shape because they might have to pay taxes on some small part of it, and they think that's ridiculous and everything. Well, that's just not accepting the reality. Anyway, I did play that touch of gray because, it looks like there's a chance here that the short vol trade might be sort of coming back a little bit. I've been saying over the last week that if we can, if the VIX can go below 18, then we probably the term structure should start lining up in the correct way, in the right way again, which would be sloping upward as the months go out. And right now, actually, coincidentally, VIX exactly at 18, and the front 2 months still inverted by 3 cents. I think it is very interesting and sort of a sign of the times how Eli Mintz did add that wide button to the VIX Central as the curve's been so flat. That wide button really puts it in perspective. So here's the VIX term structure. And let me just make sure I'm not in the way here. Okay, here's the VIX term structure. And if you do hit that wide button, you can see it really flat still. And I think that's instructive to do that because basically this is what we're dealing with, which is like no bias either way for the VIX. If you think it's going to go up, get long. If you think it's going to go down, get short. And, it's kind of pretty much even bias right now as far as like which position has edge. You can argue that like there's a little bit of beta drift for people that are going long, and so the odds are slightly against going long. Somebody posted on Twitter yesterday that the average of all time of the VIXs was 1937, but that takes into account all the spikes and the huge spikes where it got up to 80 for a second. And so the average, if you take away like 1 day or 2 days, is probably much lower, more like in the 16s or 17. And the chart, the interesting thing to me is to see if we hang out around 18, whether this term structure starts to like. I'd be interested to see how much the back months start to like, if they start to move higher from here, if we stay in this sort of 18 to 20 range, if the back months start to creep up, or if we just see yesterday, as stuff moved around, we kind of still saw, like specifically after the close, when the VIX went a little bit higher, we saw all the months move up, sort of in tandem, which was kind of interesting to me. But the VIX has been sort of like melting a little bit the last few days, and kind of coinciding with the major indices breaking out of the sell-off, and it kind of feels like it did last year when every day, in the absence of anything big happening, a little bit of air got let out of the balloon, and the VIX went lower and slowly dragged the futures down with it. I think it is instrumental to look at it with the wide thing on. We'll take it off here for a second, and I do think that if we do stay below 18 today, you will see this this start to we will close out. I'll put it this way: out of backwardation. Um, that being said, um, significant contango would not be. We're not near there until we get above like 5%, 6%, and that is still a ways off. That would still mean going to 15 or something. So it is interesting to see how UVXY and the VIX are sort of lining up at similar prices here, um, and it's kind of a race down, and we'll see now that UVXY is deleveraged. Uh, how much longer it takes it to really start to beat out the VIX here. So, for example, if the VIX goes to 15, is UVXY 15, or is it way lower than that? I know my experts out there with the models will be able to tell right away, but um, still trying to predict. I'm still trying to like calculate in my mind where the VIX needs to go to for my 12 puts to really start uh, like fattening up, and if they still have a chance by June expiration. So that's kind of what I'm looking at. It is exciting. We are kind of entering earnings today with some of the banks, I believe. But this is exciting, and it's kind of like, you know, the short vol trade is a trade of the days between. It's about all those days when nothing happens. That's when short vol trade makes money, and it's about day in and day out making a teeny bit of money, as opposed to people who are betting on the long shot for that one big vol spike. So, we'd love for this just to be another day between. Stuff just kind of creeps up in the major indices, and the VIX just kind of creeps down. And we've been on that plan for a couple days now, and it would be nice if it continues. Um, I as far as Bitcoin goes, I know I'm not gaining any fans by talking about it, but um, I do. I want to make sure it's remembered in the right context, which was it was a mania. A bunch of people who had never traded before got into it, and you couldn't tell anybody. Nobody would listen to you in December or January that it wasn't going to a million, and people had these really outrageous things to say, and were convinced that it was going to 100,000. It's just a question of when. And people who had been trading for a long time tried to caution, but were sort of laughed at. And now it's come to be. It's turned out to be right that it's pretty much peaked out at that time period, and this little sputter up 1,000 points, which is more than a sputter, I guess, but I see it as a selling opportunity for people, and I kind of want to put my opinion on the record so that we can go back later and say, well, Dave was right or Dave was wrong. I was wrong for a while with Bitcoin. When my buddies were buying it when it was 3,000, I didn't get in. I could have doubled my money or something like that. I was sort of wrong all the way up, but then I started being right. I said very publicly that it would not go above 15,000 again a few months ago, and then I've said since then that it would not go above 10,000 again, and we'll see if I end up being right or not. I do think that blockchain is interesting, but there's a million interesting scientific discoveries that come out every year, and why a certain segment of like geeky 20 somethings have focused on one technology that they think is so interesting. The mystery, it really isn't there for me. The reason is because they think they can make a fast buck on it, and saying that they're like all of a sudden interested in science and everything is just a bunch of silliness. And if you're interested in scientific discoveries, then go into science or something. But there's all these interesting things out there, and blockchain is just one of them. And it's not, it's not going to revolutionize the world more than gene therapy is, or a whole host of other things that could possibly revolutionize the world. It's just dressing up your greed as trying to make it sound like something more fancy, I think. But feel free to disagree with me. You don't have to agree with me to watch me. Hopefully, you come away thinking about something slightly differently, and we'll see what the VIX does today. Now down to 1795. I do think that we will end up slightly the right way for this curve at the end of the day if we stay below 18. But I could be off by a couple of cents, and it really doesn't matter. It's kind of significant to us geeks when this thing has that little inflection point. But in the end, VIX needs to go much lower, and we need to be in contango by a decent amount for it to really start to count as far as edge to being short the VIX. So interesting to talk about the inflection point and exactly when it happens, but the real money is only going to be made once when and if contango can get to like 5%, 10%, and that still remains to be seen if that will happen and when it will happen. Anyway, thanks for watching today, and I will see you around soon. I still have a few days left before I go to England, so I will see you around soon.